welcome back into the Toronto 6 post-game show. It's not a great one tonight. The Toronto 6 lose 6-2 to the Boston Pride, and their NWHL inaugural season is done. Justin, welcome into the show. We also have Alyssa Turner coming on later in the show. Justin, what are your initial thoughts of that game?
Look, the first about 15 minutes or so, it was all Toronto handling the puck, and that, usually what that does is that sets the tone when you've got a team that comes on strong, but things kind of just fell off the grid from there, and Boston was able to put their first goal in shortly after, and from there, like Palmara said in his Wednesday press conference, we feel strong, we feel healthy, and we feel confident, and they showed that tonight, and they got the better of the number 1 seed, being the number 4 seed, to take it 6-2.
And I know Digit said yesterday before they started this game that they did feel like the underdogs heading into this. Do you think they were the underdogs and Boston really hit their stride, or was this really Boston beating a first seed?
I think it was a little bit of both. I think part of the underdog was, again, the adversity they faced and missing players. Then, again, some of the challenges where I believe they had some sort of a 2-day-ish quarantine, just given the Canada-US border regulations. I mean, it wasn't a full thing, but it was something. And again, it's hard to get your legs under you and prepared for something like this, especially when it's a win or go home kind of thing. So part of me feels that contributed to the underdog side of things. Then on the winning side of things, I think that, they just weren't clicking as much as they perhaps hoped they would today. And as such, their offense fell short.
And for the opening part of the first period, they were really going head-to-head with Boston, and then it sort of fell apart about 14 minutes into the period, and we'll take a look at that opening goal right now.
To make the decisions based on their positioning on the ice. He didn't have replay in Lake Placid, so, when it comes down to pivotal moments, that could be important, and there we have it, just a response. Boston, after looking like they may have given up a goal, responds with one of their own, getting it past Shuley. It looked like it went through 5-hole.
I'm not sure who's going to get credit for it for Boston. Might be Kaylee Fratkin.
Turner led through the line, but...
I mean, if you're Toronto, you haven't surrendered much. This one's got to hurt after you've controlled play for the majority.
Teresa Vanasova opens the scoring for the Boston Pride, and once she hit the back of the net and got it past Elaine Shuley, Boston never looked back, and they went on to win 6-2. Do you think Toronto had a bit of an issue rebounding from that goal? I know Boston scored quickly quite after that to make it 2.
I think that, they kind of did, because it kind of was like, darn, now we've really got to get going. And then Elaine Shuley, who, look, she's a star, and tonight's game doesn't reflect anything less than that. And I think tonight she was just kind of thrown for a loop with that second goal in the way in which that was formatted by the Boston Pride and their coaches. And from there, again, the wheels just kind of fell apart. So it wasn't the best showing. But again, we have to remember that Toronto got on the board eventually when Brianne Wilson-Bennett opened the scoring for Toronto, which was closer towards the end of the first. So I wouldn't say completely, but there was definitely a sense of loss of some sort mixed within that.
And just a reminder to all of you guys watching at home, feel free to send us a comment, whether it's on Twitter, Facebook, or YouTube. We see your comments here, and if we like them, we'll put them up on the screen. But Justin, you just mentioned Brianne Wilson-Bennett's goal, and we'll take a look at that right now.
Fratkin, who had 9 points, and all of those points from Fratkin came in the form of assists, so certainly an unbalanced... Oh, then we have a goal for Toronto!
Michaela Grant-Mentis flipped one on goal, and then Brianne Wilson-Bennett tapped it in past Salander. So after just a back and forth of chances, Toronto and Boston have combined for 3 goals in the last couple minutes of game time.
A huge response is exactly what Toronto needed, especially before the end of this first period.
Michaela Grant-Mentis so dangerous with the puck on her stick. Digit Murphy was telling us that she makes decisions on what she wants to do with the puck in split seconds. One of the
Michaela Grant-Mentis gets an assist on that one. I think it was her 10th point of the NWHL season. She's been unbelievable, but Brianne Wilson-Bennett finishes off that chance. Toronto answers, and at that point, I thought there might be a real chance that Toronto brings this game back level. They didn't do it, but what was your reaction when it was at that point of the game?
Yeah, I think at that point in the game, there was anticipation of a comeback, but then seeing Boston's offense not stopping there and, kind of feeling that, okay, because our last game didn't go as planned, we're not done yet. It was just, they were a force to be reckoned with. And it was, it was just kind of insurmountable, and it topped the Toronto Six in what they felt capable of in this one.
And we'll take a quick look at our 3 stars before we head to Alyssa Turner. Taking a look at these 3 stars, Michaela Grant-Mentis, she's the first star. Apologies for the typo there. And then we have 2 Boston Pride players, and they finish off the 3 stars. What do you see from these 3 players tonight, Justin?
Well, again, we saw Vanasova open the scoring for Boston, so that's the 1 goal. Then she added 1 assist later in the game. And then Jillian Dempsey, the captain, of course, getting on the board herself. She is a leader both on and off the ice, and her teammates will tell you that, including Kaylee Fratkin, who has spoken highly of her in the past. And so we saw Jillian Dempsey score goal number 2. She also had an assist on the night. And, when you have such a strong offense that hasn't had problems getting together as a full team to match that chemistry, and despite the COVID issues, they were able to get back on the ice rather soon after the Lake Placid bubble fell apart. So I think that all that extra time and no need to worry about quarantine kind of wrecking havoc with the way they are forming their practices, it just allowed them to keep that beat going, and they didn't miss it, and they carried it away in this one.
And so the Toronto Six end up losing this game 6-2. We'll bring in Alyssa Turner right now. She is the social media manager of the Toronto Six. Alyssa, welcome to the post-game show. How was that game from a social media standpoint?
Definitely wasn't the funnest. But I was really excited just to be back covering it and just be around the sport and being back in the environment of the Twitter followers and just the interactions in general. Definitely wasn't super fun in a sense of our play and our success on the ice, and demonstrating that on social media was rather difficult. I still think I had fun with it and our followers enjoyed it. So that's all I can really ask for.
I know one of the followers that did indeed enjoy it is Holly Morrison, and she sends a message in. She says, "Hi, Alyssa."
Hi, Holly.
So I know there's a lot of people who enjoy your work on social media. And this was also your last game with the Toronto Six. You're leaving the position that you've been in all this season and since the start of the Toronto Six. So what was that feeling like?
Yeah, it's a huge bittersweet moment, just in general, stepping away from the NWHL and from working in women's hockey as a whole. It's just a huge bittersweet moment. It was difficult, and I don't think it fully hit me that it was my last one. Obviously, as the score was getting higher and there was less time left in the game, I was just kind of thinking about oh gosh, it actually is, it is getting to the last one. But I did have a different feeling kind of going into it. And now that I think about it, it's probably because deep down I knew it was my last one, or possibly, at least I should say. But yeah, no, it was hard. I've been doing this with the T6 since launch day, but I've also been working in women's hockey for the last 3 years. So it's definitely not easy. A little bit bittersweet though, because I'm excited to have a little bit of a break and step away for a bit.
And Justin, do you have a question for Alyssa?
Alyssa, first off, it's been a complete pleasure to work with you. And, we're so lucky and so, grateful for everything that you've done. So first off, thank you so much for your hard work and dedication all this time since April. None of it will be forgotten. And you will, as far as the women's hockey community goes, you will never be forgotten, and hope that you return, whenever you feel ready, or, should your next venture allow you to. But that being said, can you talk about what it's been like to really kind of draw this team up on Twitter from April, and being part of every little thing from the draft to getting to know some of these players to taking part in practices, and what that's been like?
Yeah, it's just been overall extremely special, and not only special, but a whole lot of fun. I think fans, media, anyone, whenever they see the Toronto Six, they know that they're a fun team. They know that they're really high energy. They're just a kind of a good all around, you want to be around them kind of thing. And that reflected with my work in social media and my experience with it as well. Going to practices twice a week was a huge bright spot in my week. I actually made a post about it last night, but I wasn't able to cover a game ever in person for the Six. But going to practices was very special, and the team just made me feel like I was a teammate and like I was truly part of the team, which I will never be more grateful for. And yeah, it's just been a whole lot of fun. I think it's been interesting to like see it go from like literally nothing. Like I had the handle for a long time, like the @Toronto NWHL handle for quite a while. But like to see it literally go from nothing to, we hit 15K followers today on Twitter. To see that is just absolutely remarkable. It's also been just like really like, I think it's like stretched my creative abilities as well and like my talents. And I've just like loved telling the stories. Like all these players, like a lot of them hadn't, like the NWHL landscape hadn't seen them before. Only a few of them have ever even like set foot in the NWHL. So to be able to like show like the world, like who these players are, tell their stories, what they do, like what kind of player they are, was just special. And I like couldn't be more thankful that I was given the opportunity.
And was that 15K kind of the cherry on top for you, seeing that in possibly your final day with the Toronto Six after going on this journey with them?
Yeah, I also like as much as like it was a cherry on top, like I feel like I wouldn't have cared if we didn't hit 15K, if we were still at 14.8 or whatever we were the other day when I last looked at it. I wouldn't have really cared. I look back at like some of the like messages and like stuff I've like sent to Digit, or like even like personal goals that I set just like for myself, like wherever. And like I look back at them and like we've entirely shattered every single like expectation that I had for like not only myself but like the platforms as a whole. Like I remember at one point, and this was when like there was no talk of a bubble, like no talk of anything. There was still like, we didn't know when our season was going to start, and like the possibility of it starting in like October was like kind of like the baseline of things. And I remember like telling myself, I was like, okay, if we have like 6K on Twitter and like 3K on Instagram by puck drop in the fall, I'm great. We ended up hitting that in like May. So like I'm pretty sure we ended up hitting that like end of May. Like it was around like May 24th or something like that. So as much as like the numbers have been like amazing, and like I personally do talk a lot about them because I am proud of not only the work myself has put in, but like also like the graphic designers, the video editors, the players, the staff, everyone in between who has made those numbers possible. We could have 2 followers and I would be happy to be doing it. So I guess cherry on top, yeah, but like also wouldn't have really mattered regardless. So.
And how'd this experience compare to working in the CWHL when that was around?
Well, like back when I was with the Furies, it was their last season. And I kind of like, I was still in college. I was fairly young. I didn't really know, like how to cover like live sports. So it was definitely a different experience. And I also think just being so young in it, and like, I wasn't like as like, obviously not as experienced, but also wasn't like as confident with it. So like I wasn't as good as like working with the players and like getting to know the players really well and like being able to like tell those stories through my words and whatnot. Still like the same thing. Like I remember like my first game with the Furies, like I was just like starstruck. Like I remember like covering players like Natalie Spooner and Sarah Nurse and Renata Fast, and I just remember being so starstruck. But like me now, like I remember when Emma Woods came to like the first ever practice and she like introduced me to her. She's like, "Hi, I'm Emma," and myself goes, "Yeah, I know." I don't know why I said that. I could have said something so much better than that, but like kind of the same thing. I was still starstruck by like Emma Woods and Michaela Grant-Mentis and like all these like top players, and truly just like an absolute dream, and definitely has its differences. I think I've had an overall better experience with the NWHL and with the Six in general, but I think that also comes with like my experience and like my confidence levels in my work and where I've gone from back in 2018 to where I am now.
It's definitely been impressive what you've been able to build alongside a great team at the Toronto Six, both on the ice and off the ice. Thanks so much for joining us today, Alyssa.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much.
Thanks again so much to Alyssa Turner for joining us here on the NWHL Toronto Six post-game show. Of course, the Toronto Six, their season is over now. A brief season. It wasn't the full season that they wanted. They lose 6-2 to the Boston Pride to put an end to their inaugural campaign in the NWHL. Justin, what do you, just some last words for Alyssa before she leaves the Toronto Six program?
Alyssa has been, a part of this organization from the ground up. She has done everything that one could possibly expect of her, from, growing our followings on Twitter, Facebook, even TikTok, to really, get this brand out there. And she did that. She smashed the ceiling with those record-shattering numbers. And, when you talk about someone who makes such an impact, whether it's on or off the ice, she did that off the ice with everyone who she worked with, including Digit, including myself, including our marketing team. And I'm so grateful I got the opportunity to work with her. So Alyssa, if you are still watching this, we're forever thankful. And I'm so lucky to know you. And I wish you the best of luck in wherever you're headed next.
And returning back onto some of the things on the ice, the road to Izzy is still going on. The Minnesota Whitecaps are taking on the Connecticut Whale as we speak. This is what the bracket looks like right now. Of course, the Boston Pride, they beat the Toronto Six 6-2 earlier today. And right now, right as we're on this show, it's 1-0 for the Minnesota Whitecaps as they look to advance to the NWHL final against the Boston Pride. And Justin, what are your thoughts about a potential Minnesota versus Boston final?
That would be fun, and it would be circling back to what should have happened a year ago. Might I correct you before I continue that I believe it is now 1-1 between Connecticut and Minnesota. However, that to be said, with Boston and Minnesota, again, they were supposed to play last year at Warrior Ice Arena in the Isabel Cup final, and then COVID-19 shut that down, and it was just the one game left on the schedule to play. So that was very, very much unfortunate. And so it's weird that in, the most striking of circumstances, they end up landing back at that same arena and possibly with the same matchup, depending on how the remainder of this matchup in Boston goes tonight against the Whale.
It's certainly been a wild year, and the fact that we could be getting the same NWHL Isabel Cup final matchup over a year later is pretty remarkable, I've got to say.
Yeah, I think it's remarkable, and for some people, it might even be closure in the weirdest of ways to be like, okay, we finally got to see what should have happened last year. Great. I'm okay. Or, whatever it is fans are feeling tonight as they continue to sit back and watch Connecticut and Minnesota go at it. Currently right now happening on twitch.tv and NBCSN across the United States.
We don't want you to leave our show to go watch that one. We're definitely happy to have you here, but make sure to tune into that game after our show is done. We've got about 13 minutes left here discussing the Toronto Six. And one of the things that I do want to talk about is Elaine Chuli tonight. She wasn't so confident.
No, again, I've used the expression "the wheels falling off," and I think that there's just no other phrase that kind of matches that. That's exactly what happened to her tonight. And why it happened tonight. Goalies are a hit or miss, and she's been great. She was a brick wall for the Toronto Six in Lake Placid. So sometimes things just don't fall in your favor as a goaltender. And tonight, she kind of got messed around early, especially with the second goal that just looked all but too easy to get behind her after she kind of was out of sorts, kind of unhappy about letting in the first one. So I think that the distraction got the better of her, and from there we saw the result.
I do think there were a few good goals scored by Boston. And for me, the slap shot by Soliotis, I think her name was definitely the highlight.
Yeah, Matt.
Soliotis now fires it on and scores. That's one that Elaine.
Yeah, Mallory Suliotis is a very talented player, and you see how she uses the ice to her advantage. And look, she's a great puck tracker, and her line has been one that clicks. And like Placid, we saw the same thing. So was it a surprise that she was the one that got on the board tonight? No, not by any means.
Definitely not surprised. She's a skilled player, and she was one of our stars of the game as well. But if you're taking a look at just the Toronto Six, who do you sort of have as your top three players of this season?
My top three players of this season are as follows. Michaela Grant-Mentis, obviously, talented forward who ended her season with what I believe is 10 points with tonight's goal, though it wasn't enough to get Toronto where they need to be. Look, she's had a fantastic season. She was on a tear in Lake Placid, and she came back hungry. Practice, she even switched lines because she was working that well. So she moved up with Emma Woods and Captain Cheyenne Darkangelo, Emma Woods being an alternate captain with the team. And, she's only grown, and she's so talented and so skilled and has such a great mind for the game. And so the things that she's going to continue to do, I'm so looking forward to seeing what her future holds. And then behind her is Elaine Chuli. Again, she's been fantastic. And tonight was not a reflection to say that she's not a good goaltender, because she is. I've watched her in the CWHL for years between China and Toronto, and seeing her, what she's done with the Six, it's only proof in the pudding that she is terrific. Yes, tonight's performance wasn't the one she asked for, but they'll come back stronger next season. And then we finish off with Brianne Wilson-Bennett, who finishes her season with 5 points, including tonight's goal, the first one for Toronto to get on the board in this game.
Definitely an impressive season by the entire Six team. I don't think anybody really expected much of them when they started their campaign against the Metropolitan Riveters when they were playing in Lake Placid. They started off getting shut out, a 3-0 loss. Admittedly, at that time, I thought this team was going to be your typical expansion team, but they became a bit more like the Vegas Golden Knights in the NHL and competed right off the bat, rattling off wins since that opening loss. But what were your sort of highlights of the season? We went through the 3 players, we went through tonight's game, but pick maybe a couple moments that you really stand out from this past season.
So I'm actually going to pick one that goes beyond the ice, and that would be the locker room / hall celebrations that go beyond the story after games. Because once this team really started getting in their groove after their first 2 games, each after game interaction, if you will, was a little party. It wasn't a big celebration because, look, you still have work to get done and you can't celebrate everything, but it was kind of like celebrating little steps and little victories to get to where they wanted to be. And so it was nice to not say, we can relax, but hey, we're one step closer to where we want to be. And they did it all the way up until the bubble burst in Lake Placid. So there's number 1. Number 2, we've got to see a talented team come together in almost what feels like no time. I mean, I remember it being August, and how quickly from August we've transcended upon the end of the season for them. And it's remarkable to see how far this team has come, how well these players have played. And a lot of that contributes to the fact that Digit, her method here for attracting players was you find players, some of which are friends with each other, you bring them together, sign them, and then you see what magic they can do either on the same lines or near each other. And you just, you work with the pieces and you see what works and what doesn't. And, you make a product out of that. And so with that, you saw that Lindsay Eastwood and Megan Quinn, they were working together. Megan Quinn, who knows Lindsay from Syracuse. From the CWHL, you've got Emma Greco, you've got Emma Woods, you've got Cheyenne Darkangelo, you've got Taylor Woods, you've got Kristen Barbara, you've got Elaine Chuli. You see how all these pieces mesh. And then you've got the kids who are just from Ontario who were playing overseas and getting the opportunity to come back to either A, play on home ice for the first time, or B, return home and do it for the first time as a pro. And so there were a lot of mixed ways that this team kind of came together. But A, it shows how, no adversity is too big for a team to find success. And it shows as well the outreach of Digit Murphy and the excellence that can be achieved under a coach like her, who has an everlasting energy. And we can only hope that she'll be back next season.
Definitely a fun team. You mentioned there's locker room celebrations before, and even it got me into Taylor Swift. Admittedly, I'm not the biggest Taylor Swift fan, but I started jamming out to Love Story by Taylor Swift, and that really became the anthem of the Toronto Six. I know there's different sports anthems, different teams have their own anthems, but Taylor Swift really became the soundtrack of the Toronto Six, and we'll take a look at one of those locker room celebrations right now. Definitely a fun team to be around, whether it's Digit Murphy, whether it's Julie Allen dancing in the warm-ups. It's an exciting team. It's a fun team, and we spoke to Digit after this game, and she thinks that a fair number of this team will be back, and hopefully that Six energy can still be on the team. Are there any specific players that you think really need to come back for having success with the Toronto Six next season?
Oh, absolutely. I think there's no question in my mind that players like, for example, Makyla Grant-Mentis has to come back and has to continue to be the star that she rightfully is and continue to grow into her game. Because once she does that, Hockey Canada might very well be peering at her to join the national team. So there's number 1. Number 2 is Brianne Wilson-Bennett, who I actually had the opportunity to speak to for a story on the Toronto Six website that was think back in end of January, early February. And she told me that barring any changes, she is in fact coming back. So there's relief there because Digit told her when she signed her, I'm going to play the bleep out of you. And that she did. So, and those are using her words, by the way. So again, a very talented player and someone who was a pleasure to get to know personally, and can't wait to see how she continues to excel now that she's back on home soil and able to, do it a lot closer to home and with her family, hopefully in attendance at Kenlin upon a return to normal, whatever that looks like come October. But that's number 2. And number 3, honestly, watching Emma Woods be a key piece of this team this year, I wasn't terribly familiar with her from the CWHL, but, taking a look at what she did and the leadership more so off the ice that she was able to provide to get other teammates going was something that was exceptional to me. So I think that really helped in terms of meshing together an inaugural organization. And I think a lot of kudos for that reason go to Emma. And I think that she'll find herself on the board in a more, normalized and hopefully longer season next year, which should be 24 games, barring any pandemic changes. But again, we don't know what October looks like, and we have to, wait and see. Time will tell.
Hopefully it is a longer season. Hopefully they're at Canlan Arena. For me, I think the player that really has to come back, at least on the hockey side of things, is Elaine Chuli. She was unbelievable throughout the season for the Six, save for this last game. But she has been the backstop. She's bailed the Toronto Six out while Michaela Grant-Mentis does her job at the top of the rink. But Elaine Chuli between the pipes, absolutely magnificent. A .936 save percentage coming into this game tonight. She's easily been one of their best players and has to be back between the pipes next year when they play, hopefully, at Canlan Arena.
Yeah, I would absolutely think so. And especially if Digit returns, I think that'll tell a lot of those who knew Digit from prior things, prior teams, prior events. Those will be difference makers. So I definitely think if that falls into place, which it sounds like it might, that Elaine is someone who will come back. Then again, you look at other players, just those I want to focus on for a minute, who decided to kind of stop their careers overseas and, take a chance on the NWHL. And so for that reason, again, I take a look at players like Emma Woods, Samantha Ridgewell, who only got one start and it wasn't her best start. And hopefully next year she'll get more opportunity. And the reason she didn't was because of the shortened season and because they picked their starter who they felt that was reliable and strong enough to get them through the bubble, and that was in Lake Placid. And then going into the game today, after a couple of weeks of practice, they felt comfortable with Elaine Chuli moving forward. But again, huge kudos to Samantha Ridgewell for taking a chance on the NWHL, much like Brianne, to come back from overseas and try it out. And, so many of them have spoken very highly, but it's not just of the league. Again, it's of Digit Murphy. And I think that's a huge sentiment to the bench boss and the president of this organization, especially because she's the one who did all the recruiting herself and, getting to be the head coach of them, just given the circumstances of this year, just kind of put the cherry on top, and the players were grateful for that experience.
And that's really all we've got for you tonight on the Toronto Six post-game show. It's been a weird season. It's been a fun season. For Justin Levine, I'm Ben Steiner. Thank you so much for watching our show throughout this season, and we'll see you in October.